think the best way to describe this episode, oh yeah, and full spoilers ahead, nightmare fuel. Like, I don't have issues with spiders typically, but the way in which this was shot, specifically when the spider creatures or the nightmare creatures were pouring into the ship at the end, great horror. I mean, arguably this was, especially the third act, this was a horror episode in many ways, particularly that sequence, that final sequence.
Well, the alien-esque type stuff, whether or not they're going to be able to get off the planet, whether or not they're like, there was a lot of aspects of it, like you said, that were horror based as opposed to fantasy sci-fi based.
Right.
I mean, like Starship Troopers, arachnophobia, aliens, eight-legged freaks. I wrote all that. Those were all the things running through my mind throughout that particular sequence. All kicked off by Baby Yoda eating. Even that scene was gross. Eating the spider baby.
Right.
Yeah. Very disturbing sequence.
Yeah, I think we made the joke before we started that this was Ridley Scott's The Mandalorian.
Yeah. That's what it felt like.
Father's The Mandalorian.
But yeah, this is Pulp Mythos. I'm Brian here with Spencer and Larry, and we're discussing The Mandalorian season 2, episode 2, but technically chapter 10, titled The Passenger. If you've not subbed to the channel, please do so. Lots of content on the channel. The Undoing, if you're watching that on Sunday nights, join us, hear what we have to say about it. Fargo, we're still doing Fargo. Love season 4 so far. Chris Rock is killing it. A lot of other content on the way, a lot of content behind us. Check that stuff out if you've not yet. And yeah, let's talk about The Mandalorian. I want to stay on the spider thing. The design of them I thought was really cool, and the way the movement, the fact that they were using webbing. There was a particular part where it was making me think of Lord of the Rings, dealing, especially the Hobbit film when they had the big battle with all the spiders in the forest, with the elves and everything. Matter of fact, that particular sequence mirrored this one in some ways.
Or even Harry Potter, and
yeah, good, absolutely.
Just all the amount of spiders. There's a lot of movies that have a lot of spiders, and like you said, the Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, like those movies have those sequences where that kind of shit happens. But Harry Potter the same way, when they went to see Aragog in the forest and they all started swarming the car. It was similar to this. They all started swarming the ship, and they're like trying to get in, and it's a trope that's in a lot of things, but it's never not creepy.
Yeah, and it felt extra creepy here. I feel like they really went in on the effects budget because normally, like, you've seen this scene so many times and it always is a little creepy, but this one was genuinely unnerving, I think, with the sheer volume of spiders that you saw. And when you thought it was one big one and just a swarm of little ones coming, that was creepy enough on its own. But then when he's firing and you see like the bigger ones just working their way down off the walls behind him and everything, it was a really creepy scene. And not just to mention that, but just how fast they create webs and everything, just was odd. Because when he opens up, after they're cornered, and he opens up the door to the cockpit, and just everything is just covered in webbing. It's like, good Lord, how many spiders were in there?
The speed of them pouring into the ship, when he finally gets back to the ship and they start pouring through the door, and you legitimately as the audience are like, how the hell are they going to get out of this? They go up into the cockpit, they're about to take off, and of course the giant one lands on the ship, and then they're saved. We'll talk about how they're saved soon, but yeah, I was like I said, spiders don't bother me typically. If I see one in the room, I'm usually not freaking out or gonna go out of my way to kill it. But my skin was crawling. You get that, you start looking around like, oh god, spiders everywhere. Similar to Aliens, when the face huggers, when Ripley's in the room with Newt and the face huggers are like running around the room, like that scene, that always gets to me. Of all the scenes in the Alien franchise, that's the one that bothers me the most. This was like that times 10.
Yeah, I've got like no arachnophobia at all, but you know, it's if I saw this episode at an early age, I might, you know, I might have developed one because it
Yeah.
was that unnerving, you know, and just the like you said, the way they just flooded into the ship, it was pretty intense. It was pretty well done.
Well, I think of it almost like a zombie-esque type swarm, because even in other movies, or even, you mentioned Starship Troopers, where there's a bunch of, bugs and these kind of things, but this seemed to outnumber any number of swarm type things outside of like World War Z, which wasn't good, but that kind of speed, that kind of, numbers, when they showed just how many he's shooting them, but it didn't matter how many he shot. They just kept coming. And then they weren't able to come through the little cave opening. And then the giant one went up and over. And then all the medium sized ones, all the even smaller ones. It was just so many coming from every direction. It not only was it creepy, I'm extremely claustrophobic. I'm a big guy, but when I get in tight spaces like that, it freaks me out. I've been MRIs, they're like, here, take this Valium, Xanax, like all this shit, and I still get creeped out. But I felt claustrophobic because no matter where he turned, there was 3 million more spiders, and I was just like, oh no. It felt like that closing in, and it was very like horror movie-esque. It was very unsettling.
Yeah, and it seemed genuinely hopeless. That scene. I think
That's
that's
the
the first
brilliance
scenario
of it. Yes.
that they were in. That it seemed like a hopeless moment.
And they did a good job of making you feel that. Yeah. That I like, even Baby Yoda, which you can call it what, with the child. I like Baby Yoda, but when he eats the little spider baby, and it's gross the way it's shot. But then, like, obviously he doesn't say it, or she. I don't know what Baby Yoda is, but when when he turns around and starts running, like, you could almost in your mind hear, "Oh shit!" Like like that's the look on the face, like, "Oh shit, we gotta go." But yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely one of those moments where it didn't seem like, even if we had a moment where Baby Yoda used the Force, which is to some degree where I thought it might have
I
gone
kept
that.
thinking that too, but I didn't know what the hell it could do.
What could it do other than destroy like one large spider or a bunch of smaller ones, and then you're still swarmed by this
I was expecting
uncountable number of spiders.
as they ran through that one small cave opening, that's when I was expecting him to do something like close up the cave or something to kind of limit the number. Now we did see that the big spider like went up and over, but like him closing that cave opening is what I thought was going to happen, but he didn't do anything. He was too busy trying to eat the eggs and eat the spiders. Like,
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk about the passenger. I don't recall the character's name. We'll just call it Frog Lady. The Mando basically does at one point. He's on Tatooine, and his central goal right now is to seek out other Mandalorians, because he thinks that other Mandalorians, especially ones that travel around, will be able to lead him to the Jedi, or what's left of Force users, because that's where Baby Yoda needs to go in his mind. That is his quest. That is what he's trying to do. And so, in order to get information on another Mandalorian, he has to, do this job. And that job is transporting this frog lady to a certain planet where her husband's waiting to fertilize these eggs that she's carrying in this giant bottle thing, whatever you want to call it. And so he takes the job. The big twist is he can't use hyperspace. He can't. He has to fly slow, basically, because if you go too fast or you go in the light speed, it'll fuck up the eggs. That's the best way to describe it. So you have to drive really slow, which is super dangerous. Pirates everywhere, Republic forces, Imperial remnants could be out there. He rattles off a million possible things that could be out there. And of course, we do in fact encounter New Republic X-Wings. And that leads to a really cool chase sequence. I know, Spencer, you're really into a lot of the spaceship stuff. You've got some cool tattoos that reflect that. That was an amazing chase scene. For a television show, that shit was crazy.
And we've talked about it before too. As much as I don't like the prequels, episode 2 is got a whole lot of that. Also, episode 5 has a lot of space sequence. So there's a lot of the episodes, even in episode 9, that a lot of people didn't like. I loved all the space aspects of it. I bought Rogue Squadron because that's my favorite part of Battlefront is those parts. Like, I love that aspect of Star Wars, and they did such a great job with this. And like you said, the budget for this episode seemed to be awfully high, just with all the spiders, the space battles, the different things that went on throughout. I love the initial, just him being like, oh, I'm going to go along with it. And he kept, basically almost like delaying them. And then once he realized he couldn't talk his way out of it, he hauled ass. And then even cutting through the clouds, him killing the engine and just dropping, and then, starting it back up and cutting through the canyon, and all the whole chase scene was, I thought
it was film quality. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. It almost makes you want an additional show where we get more of that, where we get more dogfights and things. Maybe something following a character like Poe Dameron, or at least what Poe Dameron used to be before Episode 9 turned him into this sort of weird rogue smuggler character.
Scoundrel.
Yeah, he's a scoundrel now, even though we previously established different. But yeah, it was a very cool chase. A lot of interesting maneuvers there. And hope we get more of that in the show. And that's scenes like that are a big reason why we all wanted a show like The Mandalorian for so long. Because when you focus on the Jedi, you don't get that so much because people want Force related stuff, and even then, you don't get a good idea of how these maneuvers are pulled off by normal pilots who don't use the Force. And we got a lot of cool stuff. We got a lot of risky maneuvers that were pulled off during this scene. And it's just like one of the cooler dogfights that you've seen at least that I've seen in Star Wars.
Well, I mean, if you get the Force using when it comes to vehicles, you get things like pod racing and but this was, like you just said, Larry, you get the non-Force aspect of flying, and it was amazing to see it. And I don't know any Air Force pilots that fly the F4s or the Harrier jets or any of those things. But the maneuvers that they do, it reminds me of like Top Gun. It's just crazy, the killing the engine, dropping, and then all of a sudden they're twisting around this mountain and cutting through here, and it's like a space version of Top Gun, and it was awesome.
Back to my childhood when I used to watch Tailspin in the mornings.
Well,
Baloo with
so
all the
actually
cool.
a good comparison.
I legit loved that show when I was a kid, and
that was
I loved all the aerial shit. I mean, him in the space, not space pirates, but the air pirates, and all that stuff was cool. But yeah,
Cloud Kicker, man.
Yeah, hell yeah, man. I bought the original Nintendo game that was really shitty. I bought that. I used to have a few little toys. That was.
I used to pretend I'd have like a skateboard that I just took no trucks, and I would watch the show and act like I was skiing on clouds and shit.
Yeah, that was a cool show. That's what they need to bring that one back. Reboot that one or whatever.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, it was fun, and yeah, you had all the
several times.
Yeah, you had a lot of, and it had a lot of cool villains, like several, different villains that were cool. But yeah, so whenever I think of aerial combat, Top Gun obviously, but I think of Tailspin. So baby, I thought they were going somewhere with this, the whole Baby Yoda eating the eggs, but I guess it was just fucking
played for comedy.
He likes eggs, and was being sort of a little bit of an asshole to and there was some parenting stuff going on between Mando and the child, and I guess that was probably the main part of it, was that relationship and that being a father, basically. But yeah, what did y'all think about the egg stuff? Particularly him eating it, and like you said, Larry, it was absolutely played for comedy because that's the final shot is him sneaking another egg in his mouth. So yeah, I guess it was a comedy. There's a lot of dark. This was sort of a lot of disturbing things about this episode. Maybe the child is consuming her eggs throughout the whole episode. The spider stuff. There's a gag at the very beginning, which I want to talk about in a minute, involving his jetpack. That's sort of disturbing. Uh, do you feel that too? That this episode just had a lot of dark humor to it throughout.
Well, yeah, because we had as we're describing, well, given the way that she described it, the rarity of her species and how hard it is for them to reproduce. I mean, I'd say so, given that it looks like we, had almost had a comedic genocide there. So yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, and like you said, it was played for comedy, but even the jetpack part where he launched dude up in the air and then just dropped him.
It was funny, but it disturbed me a little bit. Like, I don't know why. Yeah, it was at the beginning when they're trying to kidnap the child and mess with Mando, but he gives the dude the jetpack and then he launches it up, and your immediate thoughts, oh, that dude's gonna fall to his death.
Yeah,
and it is funny, but it is a dark humor to it. It's like, oh man, that's a disturbing way to go, because this guy has all that time to think about what he did and what led him to this death. As he's falling.
Yeah, it's such a slow death and no way out of it. Like, and it's the sort of thing where I don't know, we're also seeing clearly a build to something in some way, because Mando looks at the child after that, and the child looks over at him, and he just kind of shrugs like it is what it is.
There is a thing going on between those two. Like I said, there was a lot of almost parenting in this episode.
But I don't see the dark humor as necessarily a bad thing, because he's almost an anti-hero-ish. The end scene, which I won't go too much into, but the pilots talk to him and talk about all these good things he's done. Mando has done a lot of things that are honorable. However, he's not a great guy. And, even in the first episodes, he just walks into this hallway, and the stormtroopers are always considered the villain, but these guys are just guarding somebody, and he takes half of them out. And they didn't do anything to him. Even when he started shooting up all of the other bounty hunters, they're just like, hey man, chill out. And he's just like, okay. And then kills all of them. He's not a good guy. He has a mission, and he's doing everything he can to do it. And I think this episode showed that he's willing to do what it takes to get what his job is, get it done. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I still thought parts of it were super funny, but I think that's what they're trying to get at, is that he will go to any length to achieve his goal.
Right, yeah, because the good things that he's done have either been because it's either not out of his way and he's become friends with a person, or like they're an ally to him now, so it's kind of an honorable thing to do in that way, or they were happenstance because it happened to be on the way to his mission. Oftentimes, I guess with the exception of that village he saved in season 1, which I don't know whether or not he had to do that. Thinking back, well, y'all remember with the walkers and everything. That was a very cool scene. But I don't know. It seems like deep down he may be a good person, but on the other side of that coin, he is very much a bounty hunter, and started off this season, even if he is becoming a better person, he was like you all mentioned, get the job done and get it done within our code of honor, and that's good enough for me. That seems to be his view of things.
Well, he did. The people who kidnap him this time around, he didn't try to reason with them and be like, hey guys, don't do that. He just stopped and then killed all of them. So it wasn't I think that what he did was necessary, because otherwise Baby Yoda would have been taken for whatever bounty they were trying to receive on him. But he is, I think, a good person, but he has zero problem with eliminating uh, the people who are opposed to what he is trying to do.
Well, he's the product of his world,
Yeah.
and they say it even in this episode at the end. He's Clint Eastwood from the Man with No Name trilogy. He really is. He is that character. But if you know, at the end of the episode, when the New Republic pilots are the ones that come back and save him and kill the giant spider monster, and they like you said, they rattle off all the good things he's done that has helped them and helped the New Republic. And so they're basically saying, well, there's issues with you, but clearly when it counts, you seem to sway towards the good guys, or what we consider the good guys. So we'll cut you a break. And I think that's interesting because they're like, yeah, it's tough out there, and things are not stable. And we got a lot of that lesson in the last episode where they were talking about, when the Empire fell, all the people that were taking advantage of that, all the gangs moving in. And we know from last season the Imperial Remnant is a legit threat under Gideon's, control. And then obviously the New Order should be formed at some point. So there's a lot of, bad out there.
When the hell is Gideon coming back?
I'm starting to, I need him back soon because he's so badass at the end of last season. I'm like, that's got to happen soon, I would hope. I don't want to wait till the end of the season for him to return.
Well, then it would end up being the same thing. He would come in and be in the last 2 episodes and be like, I'm the bad guy still. They've built up this character that seems to be the direct opposition. And now he's gone again. So,
I feel like we're building to that, and it seems like we know that we're going to get Ahsoka and potentially Sabine from the Rebels cartoon in this series, and we're possibly dealing with, since Gideon is working covertly in a big way. We'll probably get more of him, or we'll get a lead to him once we get those characters in there, because then to some degree, Gideon will be running his ops on them, and they'll be running some counter ops on the Imperial Remnant, because I can't see those 2 characters letting that mission go. At least not in being a part of this plot line. So clearly I think they'll come in, and Gideon will come in at the same time, and that'll be our greater plot probably for the second half of the season.
I hope so. I've gone through all my notes. I really don't have much else to say. So I want to bring up the child. Everything hinges on the child, the purpose of the child. And we haven't discussed that. We didn't discuss it last week, really. So let's talk about it, here. Clearly, he's trying to get it to the Jedi. The Imperial Remnant wants it. Where do you think that story is going? There's a million theories online, so if you want to reference one of them, fine. But what do you think is the point of the child? What is it? Is it a clone of Yoda? Is it not? What would the Jedi do with it? What does the Empire want with it? Do you guys have any thoughts on that? We haven't talked about it really much at all. So, yeah, what do you guys think about that?
It's Yoda and Luke's kid.
On Dagobah. That almost syncs up, about 50 years? Yeah.
I don't really have a full-blown theory. I've, thought about it a little bit, but it almost feels like it's a plot device as opposed to as a full fleshed out story.
Do you think that the writers don't have a definitive plan yet, or do you think they do?
No, I think they do. I'm just saying that excuse me. I think that they're using Baby Yoda to push Mandalorian's story forward, which isn't bad. I mean, every story has to have a reason for the character to do certain things. Otherwise, it has no direction and it becomes kind of baseless. But so I think it's a good thing. But I do think that I don't think that his story is nearly as important as Mando's story.
Well, here's my question then. Do you think that maybe given the Empire's experience in dealing with, being led by the Sith, and the fact that they had like a doctor and and a team that were clearly going to like run experiments and study it. Like, do you think perhaps that they were perhaps going to try and clone Baby Yoda, and because with that technology they could clone it, they could age it, they could make clones that are allied with them, and maybe a force sensitive clone.
I think that's not a stretch. I mean, clearly, they're all the stormtroopers were clone troopers. The Emperor had clones of himself.
That's canon now.
Yeah,
it used to just be in the books, in Dark Empire trilogy. It's in the movies now too, so it's not just one of those things that did exist. It does exist again. So I don't think that that's beyond the realm, but I think that just gives the Mandalorian an option.
Snoke was cloned, had several clones. Yeah, so like you said, Larry, the Kaminoan scientists, that's clearly true. They had one. But I think the most interesting thing about that has yet to be explained, I think, was that, remember when Gideon brought his crew in, he slaughtered the other Imperials trying to get the baby, which means it almost felt like there were two different factions.
Right.
So are there multiple, what are the politics of the Empire right now? Because when Gideon rolls in, his crew shit is legit. You know what I mean? Like, they have, their tech is up to par. Their armor looks clean. They look like they still have some power. And so it appears if there's different groups with different levels of leadership. I would love to dig into the politics of how that all operates.
Well, and it could also, quit. Dog's trying to drink my coffee. I don't need you being more spazzy, McGruff. Holy shit. But they, having the Camino guy basically want to do experiments, but he wasn't trying to hurt him. That could be that the Imperials are trying to kill it to keep, the Jedi remnant from coming back. So it could be that the Camino guy was trying to save him, but also clone him, as opposed to maybe the Imperials were trying to dispose of him. So I don't, or, watch him, maybe trick a Jedi into coming and trying to rescue him, or, that's the plot part that I'm not 100% sure about, how they're trying to push that forward. But I do feel like it is just.
Well, I get the feeling that potentially, Gideon, whatever purpose it is, that whatever purpose he wants to capture Baby Yoda for, I feel like Gideon wants him alive, because otherwise, during that scene, like, if they didn't have any use for it and they just wanted it dead, they would have just leveled that hut that the Mandalorian and his crew were hiding in, when Gideon shows up for the first time.
Larry, my final question is: Quinlan Vos part of Ahsoka's crew?
I hope he shows up. And honestly, since we mentioned Quinlan Vos so much, probably not on this program, but we do mention him a lot. Just go ahead and say it. I feel like it would make more sense for this character to show up than the others, and I feel like he sort of fits into the more grounded grittiness of this series than, let's say, an Ahsoka.
I'd be disappointed if he doesn't pop in one of the, there's rumors of other shows coming out and everything. It would be a waste. You spend all that time building that character as sort of this gray Jedi type character. He's very powerful. Some of his abilities are similar to what Rey has in the in her, with her ability set. He had somewhat of a relationship with Asajj Ventress. He has ties to the Clone Wars, and we don't really know what happened to him. So it's like they. And
he's kind of a tracker also.
Yes, yeah, that goes in, yeah, absolutely.
And that fits with the Mandalorian's mission, and it's the type of character that could show up in the show and not necessarily steal the spotlight. Well, maybe for the episode he's in to some degree, steal the spotlight, but the type of character that would also make sense for him to leave and go his own way for large portions of the show, and not make the whole thing about Jedis.
I was getting ready to start singing Stevie Nicks and Fleetwood Mac there. Your own way.
But yeah, I think I'm excited. I thought this episode was solid. I enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. Like I said up front, it didn't really move the plot along a whole lot, but I was fine with that. This felt like a horror film, especially the second half. 2 episodes in, the budget has been very impressive. As far as what they're willing to spend on these episodes, the quality is so good. I'm having a good time with it. We have 6 episodes left, and yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes. Any last things y'all want to talk about?
I mean, are we Jerry Springer in it? Giving our last thoughts a little bit.
Yeah.
I used to love Jerry. It was always a giant train wreck. You couldn't look away from. But they, I am interested to see where it goes. I've enjoyed the ride so far. We've said this on a lot of other series that we've watched. It's sometimes the journey is better than the payoff. So I hope that this journey has a good payoff, just like season 1. Season 1 was fantastic. I felt, the whole journey, it was a couple bumpy parts in the first season, but then by the end, it was great. So I think that this, although Jon Favreau's got his hand in everything this time, so you talk about continuity and everything else, I think that it is going to flow just like the first season. There's going to be a couple parts that aren't going to make sense until the end. So I hope that Gideon and them trying to set up other series, the Ahsoka stuff, I am curious how they're going to tie it all in. And to me, I'm not just curious what the future of this series is. I'm curious as to how they're going to all tie in together, because to make not MCU, but an MCU TV style version of the Star Wars universe, I'm very interested to see how they're all going to tie into each other.
Yeah, agreed. And I think at least the hope is for me that we and I think you were kind of addressing that earlier, Brian, that while episodes like this are good, and we do need that we do get a fair amount of advancing the story as well. Even though if we got half a season, of episodes like this peppered in with, the other half being story-driven episodes, so you get just sort of a one-off adventure and then a story episode. That'd be fine if we got an equal distribution of both, because this was still very enjoyable. I enjoyed this episode, roughly as much as any other episode of The Mandalorian, to be honest. So, as long as we do get that in there, and as long as that Gideon plot doesn't come in, solely during the last 2 episodes, then I think it'll be a good balance.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, that's The Mandalorian, chapter 10. As I said up front, a lot of content on the channel. If you've not checked any of it out, if you've not hit the sub button, please do so. Channel's growing. Yeah, it's doing well. So yeah, we will see y'all next week for another Mando review. All right, bye.